Gina, thank you very much for joining us for ELPC's 2021 Gala. I really appreciate it. I recognize how incredibly busy you are right now. So let's just jump right in. You were in the EPA, you were leading the EPA under President Obama, and now you're in the White House with President Biden, which has an all-in federal government approach to dealing with climate change. How is that different than prior administrations?
Well, Howard, first, let me thank you for inviting me. It's great to be back with you and your team. You do such a terrific job, and I wish we could have this gala in person. I could hang out with you, that's for sure. But let me very directly answer your question, and that is that this president, when he came in on board back last January, which seems like a lifetime, but it was just not too long ago, like 8 months. You know, he had some really difficult issues that he had to contend with out of the gate. Even for a president, I think they were a cut above. And that is COVID-19. We had to get a pandemic under control. Then we had to look at how we start rebuilding our economy as quickly as possible so that people could feel good that our country was out of the slump and moving forward. Then we had the challenge of racial equity, which was really if you recall, was a prominent feature of the challenges of the time, and it remains so because we have yet to deal with the racial inequities of the past. And this president was bound and determined that we don't stop thinking about that, but instead integrate it into all of our thinking and what we do. And then lastly, you know, we were confronted and we remain confronted by a tremendous climate crisis. The president understood that the challenge wasn't just how to deal with the climate, but it was how to grow jobs again. And he also understood that clean energy is the answer to both how you grow jobs and restore the how you address climate change. And if we did that in a smart way, and we really started investing, which is what he is all about, then we could also do a much better job at dealing with the communities that have been left behind, making sure they had their fair share of the investments coming through.
Well, you know our view for years, clean energy development, good for jobs, good for economic growth, and good for the environment as a climate change solution. And the Justice 40 initiative of the administration really pulls that into play in terms of equity and communities that sometimes have been left behind. As you know, Gina, the recent UN report says climate change is happening faster than we even thought. And last summer, we're seeing the devastating impact of intense storms, hurricanes, floodings, wildfires on a regular basis. How do you think that moves and impacts the public debate? How does it affect the politics of climate change?
Honestly, Howard, it's like all of what we read 30 years ago and worried about is happening now. And it's not just, you know, happening in the United States, it's happening across the world. And the most recent IPCC report, where they called Climate a Code Red, was a really startling document if you read it compared to the documents before, which were pretty startling enough. So I think what you're seeing is that across the United States, people actually support the actions that we're taking. You know, they're not only just failing to deny climate now, but they are embracing the fact that we need to build resilient infrastructure. We need to think about a new way of doing business and growing jobs. We need to think about the inequities because we're seeing who's hurt the most and continues to be hurt over and over. But it does bring a sense of urgency to the table, and it brings a sense of commitment to the table. And that's why you see the president and I think folks in Congress really wanting to recognize that now is the time, Howard.
You mentioned a little bit about infrastructure. Talk, if you would, for a minute, how important the infrastructure and economic reconciliation legislation is when it comes to climate change. How does that work? What does it do?
It's really important. There's no question about it. But also make no mistake, we're going to get there one way or another. You know, but this is the smartest path to actually begin to address climate more effectively, but also to advance this shift to clean energy. So where infrastructure is concerned, we're talking about roads and bridges and ports and airports that are going to be built and improved to make them resilient to the challenge of climate. We're talking about investments in clean drinking water. Lord knows we have both the sewer system and our drinking water systems need to be modernized for this era and the challenges we're seeing today. You know, we have to build EV infrastructure. We now have the automakers saying, okay, electric vehicles are it, we're going to run. Well, we got to have people get access, and we've got to make sure that that infrastructure is there and find creative financing. You know, we want to do something called the Clean Energy Accelerator, which most of us think of as a green bank. Give states resources to be creative about loans so you can help environmental justice communities. This is not build back the way it used to be. It is better for a reason. And so these really have to be looked at not as sacrifices or price tags. These are the investments that our country needs to be our country again.
I have to ask you about the Great Lakes, and ELPC has been framing climate change solutions in terms of the impacts on the Great Lakes, because there's strong bipartisan, really nonpartisan support to protect the Great Lakes. What do you see as other opportunities like this to frame climate impacts and solutions in ways that bring on a lot of additional public support?
You know, Howard, I think it's terrific that you do that. And you know I do, because, you know, for far too long, we haven't really made people think about climate as something that impacts them and their communities. And there's nothing like personalizing what happens in the middle of the country, like where you are in Chicago, than to talk about the Great Lakes and the challenges there and the solutions that can be brought to the table. That's what personalizes it. That's what makes these challenges kitchen table issues, something you can get your arms around and actually yourself do something about.
You know, you and I are both optimists. We focus on solutions, not gloom and doom. And, you know, and it's easy for people to be cynical about climate change. Just what makes you hopeful about our future? What makes you hopeful about our ability to combat climate change and really make a difference?
The fact that we can do this. I honestly believe that the only thing that will stop us is not being hopeful, is not grabbing the opportunities of today. And I got a president, you know, who from day one campaigned on delivering this. That's really cool.
It is. All right, let's get it done. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for all that you're going to keep doing. Anything that ELPC and our staff can do working with you and your team, just call on us. We'll do it with you.
Well, you got a great team, Howard, and you're a tremendous leader, and I appreciate everything you do always. Thanks so much, and thanks, Chicago.